Hey there viewers, welcome back to another episode of Ray of All Trades. So next on the bench is an Echo Srm225. As you can see, it's in pretty good condition. Primer bulb is discolored. Whew. Fuel smells like turpentine. Well, there's no fuel in it, but where the fuel was in the fuel tank smells like turpentine. You can peek at the plug. That doesn't look too bad. You gotta be careful about how much time and parts you put into these things, because you rapidly pass a point of diminishing returns on them. Plugs, it's kind of running rich, but nothing completely out of the ordinary. Good NGK plug. Easy to pull over without the plug in it, and it was hard to pull with the plug in it. Let's check and see if it fires if I can. Just laying something metal against the metal part of the engine. It's not going inside the engine, it's going on the outside of the engine. See if I can get it to spark. The switch is in the on position. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. It is sparking pretty good. I don't know if y'all can see that or not. Anyway, it's sparking pretty good. I was noticing some lines on the cylinder wall, but didn't look terrible, like it was something catastrophic. So I think we're actually just looking at normal wear and tear. Two-stroke to it. So that test, adding the two-stroke to it, is going to check spark, compression, timing, a whole lot of stuff, right? It takes the carburetor out of the mix. So we know the motor runs. Actually runs really well. The fuel lines are usually the next most common problem on these, and without a doubt this one, if I push on it, it'll snap in two. Air filter's in really good shape. Carburetor doesn't look terrible. I might just try to find some fuel lines for this, and to that extent, the one fuel line that's the most rigid is really the return line. So it's the least important of all of them. Kind of curious if it's even worth just putting gas in it before I start looking at it for parts. Let's do that. Let's just assume that good shape trimmer. Maybe it was just dropped off because they got it confused with another one, and maybe this one runs just fine. Let's check the primer bulb. Alright, I think we finally found the problem. Primer bulb will not pull gasoline. It feels like I'm pushing air only here, so the check valve inside the carburetor for the primer bulb most likely is the culprit. So I'll tell you what, we're just going to order a carburetor and a fuel line kit. It'll come with an air filter and stuff, but honestly we won't need it. Y'all stay tuned. Okay guys, next day, 2 days, whatever. Parts came in for this Srm225 Echo. See what they sent us. Oops. Helps when you open it up the right way. What did they give us? So, it's like carburetor. And just a quick matchup. Appears to be correct. Looks identical. They gave us Savior spark plug. Hopefully that's a good Savior. 2 more primer bulbs. I guess they worried that the first 2 aren't going to work right. Gave us a new air filter. Well, they gave us 2 air filters. Carburetor gaskets. And new fuel lines. And that's fantastic, because if you remember, one of these is extremely brittle. The other 2 have some flexibility to them. And a new fuel filter. 2 T27s. Pay attention to how this comes out. This is in the back. Oddly enough, these chokes, the only thing that they're doing, let me show you, this is kind of cool. The only thing they're doing when you flip that choke is it's cutting off the hole. You see that? It's cutting off the hole. It's effective, it works. The throttle cable, the easiest way to get these out of here is pull the trigger, hold this back while you release the trigger, then the cable will be free to pull out. So pull that cable out of there, let it go, loosen up this. Stationary, you can't loosen it, so just crack that one loose. 10 millimeter. Everything's 10 millimeter these days, right? Anyway, just loosen it up enough to slide out the throttle cable. So we're going to pull carburetor out the way. We're going to reach in and just pull out this. Did you see that? Yeah, so anyway, this breather just stuffs up in there. Pull it loose. I'm going to leave the lines attached to the carburetor. Use a screwdriver to pull out this grommet. Be gentle with it because I've mentioned in other videos, not all of the aftermarket grommets are good, so I always save the original grommet gently so that it doesn't slip. The screwdriver, that is. Cut your hand or worse. So pull it loose. This one, I think I'm going to opt to want to change this one because this one's extremely rigid. Tells me it probably would have leaked whenever it went back together. Oh, what do you know? The fuel filter and everything comes out with it. Actually fits out of there. We'll take this carburetor apart just so I can show you guys how to rebuild it at the end of the video. So let's match them up. I'm going to take the original carburetor. The line that's rigid and almost broken is the breather line, which is this one here, the one that's really short. Doesn't have anything on the other end. That end goes to, hold the carburetor that way, goes to, no it doesn't. Hold it like this and pay attention to what you're doing. I'm talking to myself. So anyway, that one goes here. So that's, again, that's the short line, doesn't go anywhere. The long fuel line, the one that actually comes all the way through the grommet and everything, that has a filter on the end of it, goes here. And the breather element was already attached, so I'm hoping that this is long enough to, it's actually really close, so maybe I don't want to start modifying that. Let's go ahead and get this buried in the tank. So I'm going to push the grommet in on the bottom side, and I'm going to work the top side. I'm mashing in, and I'm going to be using dull screwdriver to help massage it around. Okay, there we go. So this gasket I was talking about, you can see is torn. And it had a gap right there. Could have been when we took it off. Could have been running that way for a long time, running lean, something like that. It appears that this thing has, I don't know if it was manufactured that way, but it's got like a slit here. I don't see any reason for having that slit right there because there's nothing on the carburetor or the mounting block that actually match up with it. The only matches up is this impulse line hole right here. So, and that lines up with that hole there. I don't see any reason to have this slit here. Just clean off your surface. This connection is the most critical for air leaks. The one on the outside is prior to the metering, so it's not as critical. Let's see if this lines up. It does. So these two holes line up, and then that impulse line lines up. So I want those two to line up. Looks like there wasn't a gasket on this side of the carburetor, but we can put a gasket there. It'll help keep air and stuff, dirt and stuff out. So line those up. Remember, this goes to the back side. Just like that. At this point, you can put the gasket on here. These are made to go on dry. They don't need a adhesive or anything. But if you're working with an older gasket and you do decide to put some sort of an adhesive on there, make sure that it is gasoline resistant adhesive. Not all of them are. Take the breather element, stuff it back in this hole here in the back, allows air in to replace the fuel that's leaving. Tighten them evenly. Remember how we took out the throttle cable? We're going to pull this out as far as it'll reach. We're going to grab this side of the throttle and pull it just like the other one. You're going to have to rotate this brass assembly right here until it lines up. One side has a groove and the other side doesn't. For a groove to accept this, so this is going to slide all the way down into that brass area. So pull it all the way in until it matches up into the brass area. Let go of your throttle. This hex nut has to slide down. So if it doesn't slide down, it's probably because that turned while you were there. And then tighten this 10mm back up. Check your throttle. Opens and closes like it's supposed to. This is your idle speed screw. Your air idle adjustment is down that hole right there. It's a really small flathead screwdriver, like a jeweler's screwdriver. And it's a flathead screw. Most people don't know about that one. Anyway, that's where that's at. If you have to adjust the air idle mixture, that's where that one's at. I don't believe this one has a high speed adjustment. Oh, it does have a high speed adjustment screw. It's on the back side of the carburetor, and it's right there, just below the primer bulb. Brass fitting, flathead screw, and that should be your high speed. Your low speed should be, I might have those backwards. One adjustment's in here, the other adjustment's here. I'll verify. I'll put a note in the video if I'm wrong. It has some fuel in it. I don't know if it's got enough. Yeah, it's got plenty in there. Yep, prime's up. Go ahead and get it to start and run. Okay, so as promised, let's get this carburetor taken apart. Your return line comes off this side. The supply line comes off this side. So if you wanted to check to see if this works, you would compress that primer bulb, put your finger over the supply, and see if it actually pulls. And then this one should be pushing air. It's very, very faint. Alright, so to change your primer bulb, if that's the only thing that was wrong, you would pull out these 4 screws. Pull this metal plate off. Primer bulb would come right out. Okay, that's when you would put one of these new primer bulbs in. Okay, it's got 2 check valves. One lets it makes a vacuum, and the other one's the return. So one of them's pulling, and the other one's pushing. So that priming action, that's the check valves that it's using to run that fuel through. Well, that screw is there. So underneath here, that's your diaphragm, and yeah, that shouldn't be stiff like that. And then here's your reed valves, one there that's already in the bent position, and then one right here that, that one's actually working like it's supposed to. But you would pull off this, the gasket stays on the downside area, and then the membrane side is against the carburetor area. These two check valves are what's allowing that air movement. So you would want to ultrasonic this, ultrasonic the body of the carburetor. This outside plate, no real reason to clean it unless it's full of dirt, but it's all it is a cover. So it goes on like that. That one's actually working like it's supposed to, although it is still somewhat stiff. I don't know if y'all can hear it. Your jet is down in here, your needle, excuse me. The needle fits against the seat. That diaphragm pushes up and down on this, right? So as the air is in and out of the impulse line, it makes the diaphragm move this valve up and down. Needle and seat allows fuel to come through. So you would pull that screw out. Short screw. There's a spring underneath here. That's the hardest part, is lining all this up at one time. So there's a spring underneath here, and the jet comes out. On the other side, 3 screws, screw here. You don't have to take this apart, but this is how you would get to throttle. Right? So as this is turning, it's turning that, allowing air in and out. So and that fits down inside there. That's how you would rebuild a carburetor. You had a gasket kit for this, clean it all out, blow air through all your passages, put it all back together. There's not a lot to it, as promised. That's it. That's the Echo Srm225. Easy repair. Bought the kit for one of the big box stores. I think it was 15 bucks maybe. Came with all those pieces. Really easy to change. Hardest part is pushing that grommet down into the fuel tank. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Appreciate you hanging out with me for the day. If you learned anything, got anything out of it, just enjoyed watching me work, then smash that like button, please. Hit the subscribe button or notification bell. You'll see any new videos whenever they're released. Thanks for hanging out.